Here, if you throw a cup of boiling water into the air, it never lands as water. It explodes into ice before it falls. Here, if you turn your car off in winter, you may never start it again. So no one turns their car off, ever. Here, the cold is so complete that your breath freezes on your eyelashes within seconds, and stepping outside unprepared can kill you before you reach the end of the street. This is Oymyakon, a small village in the far east of Siberia, the coldest permanently inhabited place on the surface of the Earth. A thermometer here once fell to nearly -68 degrees Celsius, and yet around 500 people live here, by choice. Children walk to school, old men fish. Life goes on at a temperature that should make life impossible. Why would anyone live in a place actively trying to kill them? How do you survive a cold that freezes your eyes shut? And what is buried in the frozen ground beneath them? Stay with me. This is life at the very edge of what a human body can endure. To understand Oymyakon, you first have to understand it's cold. Because this is not winter as most of the world knows it. This is another category of experience entirely. Oymyakon sits in the Sakha Republic, a vast region of northeastern Russia also known as Yakutia. It is one of the most remote inhabited places on the planet, a cluster of wooden houses along the Indigirka River, thousands of kilometers from any major city. To even reach it, you drive for 2 days along a frozen road from the nearest airport. Now, the numbers. In the depths of winter, the average temperature sits around -50 degrees Celsius. Not the record, the average. On the coldest recorded day in 1933, the thermometer at the local weather station dropped to -67.7 degrees. Some accounts claim it fell even further, close to -71. Let that sink in. At those temperatures, exposed skin can freeze in minutes. Metal tears the flesh off a bare hand. Glasses freeze to your face. Pens stop working because the ink turns solid. Batteries die in moments. To take a single photograph outside, people keep their phone tucked inside their clothing, against the skin, then pull it out, snap the picture, and hide it away again before the battery dies, which can happen in under a minute. The air itself becomes a kind of weapon, and here is the detail that captures it best. In summer, this same village can reach over 30 degrees Celsius of heat, from -67 to +34, a swing of more than 100 degrees across a single year. Almost nowhere else on Earth experiences such a violent range. To put that winter cold into human terms, it is far below the inside of a household freezer, which sits at around -18. It is colder than the North Pole, which is warmed slightly by the ocean beneath its ice. On its very worst days, the air in this Siberian valley approaches temperatures you would expect on the surface of another planet. This is not a cold you dress for and forget. It is a cold you defend against every single hour, or it takes you. So why here? Why is this one small valley colder than the Arctic coast, colder than the North Pole itself? The answer lies in the land. Oymyakon sits in a low basin ringed by mountains. In winter, the heavy, freezing air sinks down off those slopes and pools at the bottom, trapped with nowhere to escape. The village lies at the bottom of an invisible lake of cold, and through the long polar winter, with barely a few hours of weak sunlight each day, that cold only deepens. Nature built this place to be uninhabitable. And that makes the next fact all the stranger, because people have lived here, not for decades, but for centuries. There is a bitter irony hidden in the name. Oymyakon is said to come from a word tied to water that does not freeze, a thermal spring where herds once came to drink, even in the depths of winter. The coldest town on Earth is named after warm water, and that name points to who was here first. Long before any weather station, this land belonged to the indigenous peoples of Siberia, the Yakut, who call themselves the Saka, and the Evenki. These were not people who stumbled into the cold by accident. They were among the very few human beings on the planet who learned to master it. They were herders. They followed reindeer and raised hardy horses that could paw through the snow to feed and survive temperatures that would kill almost any other breed. These Yakutian horses are a wonder in themselves. Short, stocky, impossibly tough, growing a thick double coat each winter, and living outdoors all year round, with no stables and no shelter, digging through deep snow to reach the frozen grass below. They simply endure the way everything that lives here must. They wore layered furs perfected over generations. They knew how to read the ice, how to travel across a frozen world, how to store food in a natural freezer that never thawed. Where others saw a death sentence, they saw home. For centuries, they moved with the seasons across this brutal land, building a way of life around the one constant they could rely on: the cold. Think about what that means. Everything about human survival, shelter, food, water, warmth, becomes a daily battle here. And these people did not just endure that battle. They built a culture on top of it. Songs, traditions, a deep knowledge of a landscape that the modern world still struggles to survive for even a few days. For a long time, that was Oymyakon, a remote gathering place in the taiga tied to the rhythm of the herds, known only to the people who lived there. But in the 20th century, the outside world arrived, and it did not come for the reindeer. It came for something buried in the ground, and it brought with it one of the darkest chapters in human history. Before we go into that darkness, stay in the village a little longer, because the everyday reality of living here is astonishing on its own. Start with the most basic thing of all: your car. In Oymyakon in winter, you do not turn your engine off, not at night, not while you shop, often not for months. Because if you do, the engine can freeze solid, the fuel can turn to sludge, and the vehicle simply will not start again. So cars run around the clock, or are kept in heated garages. A parked silent car in winter is a car you may have lost. Now, water. Indoor plumbing is a luxury the deep cold does not allow, because underground pipes freeze and burst. So in much of the village, people still rely on outhouses, stepping out into a cold that can kill several times a day for the most ordinary human need. Then there are the children. Schools in Oymyakon do not close for the cold the way schools elsewhere do. They stay open until the temperature drops below -55 degrees Celsius. Think about that threshold. A cold that would be a national emergency almost anywhere else is simply a normal school day here. Look at the houses, and you notice something strange. Many stand slightly raised, up on stilts or piles. That is not for the view. Beneath the village lies permafrost, ground that has stayed frozen for thousands of years. If the warmth of a house sinks straight into it, the ground melts, shifts, and the building begins to sink. So the homes are lifted just off the earth to keep the frozen world below undisturbed. And keeping those homes warm is a full-time act of survival. Furnaces of coal and wood burn day and night, all winter long, never allowed to go out. Because if the fire dies, a house can freeze solid from the inside within hours, pipes and all. The smoke over Oymyakon never stops rising. It is the sign that inside each of those small wooden houses, a fire is being fed against the dark, hour after hour, for 8 months of the year. And then, food. Almost nothing grows in soil that is frozen solid for most of the year. There are no fields of wheat, no vegetable gardens flourishing in the sun. Life here runs on meat, reindeer, horse, and on fish, often eaten raw and frozen, sliced straight from a block. This dish even has a name, stroganina, long, thin shavings of raw, frozen fish, cut from Arctic species like muksun and nelma, and eaten while still solid. Siberian sashimi, carved from the deep freeze of the river itself. Alongside it comes reindeer, horse meat, even raw horse liver, chosen not for luxury, but for the dense fuel a body needs to keep burning against the cold. Even drinking water is labor. With the pipes frozen, families haul blocks of ice cut from the river and melt them on the stove for everything they drink and wash with. And there is one final task the cold makes almost unbearable: burying the dead. The ground is frozen so hard and so deep that you cannot simply dig a grave. Instead, a bonfire is lit over the chosen spot and left to burn for hours, thawing the earth just a few centimeters. The glowing coals are raked aside. That thin layer of softened soil is dug out, and the fire is lit again and again for days. It can take 3 full days of burning and digging just to bury a single person. In Oymyakon, even death has to wait for the cold to loosen its grip. This is not survival for a weekend expedition. This is ordinary life, lived generation after generation, at a temperature the human body was never designed to face. And it has been going on quietly for a very long time, until Oymyakon's remoteness made it useful to a regime that needed places the world would never see. To reach Oymyakon, you travel part of the way along one of the most haunting roads on the planet. On the map, it is the Kolyma Highway. To the people of this region, it has another name: the Road of Bones. The name is not a metaphor. In the 1930s, under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union discovered that this frozen corner of Siberia was rich in gold and other minerals, but there was no way to reach it. So the regime decided to build a road, more than 2,000 kilometers long, through some of the harshest terrain on Earth. And to build it, they used the cheapest labor a dictatorship could find: prisoners. Over roughly 20 years, from the 1930s into the 1950s, the camps of the Kolyma region, part of the vast Soviet gulag system, swallowed enormous numbers of people. By some estimates, around 2 million men and women were shipped into this territory. Many had committed no real crime at all. They arrived to mine gold with their bare hands in temperatures near -50, poorly clothed, barely fed, worked until they broke. The writer Varlam Shalamov, who survived 17 years in these camps, described a world where the cold itself did the killing, where prisoners washed gold by hand in freezing water even on the harshest days, and frostbite, starvation, and exhaustion were simply routine. Kolyma became a byword for the very worst of the entire gulag system, a place, people said, from which almost no one returned. Historians estimate that the construction of this single road cost somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 lives. And here is where the name comes from. In ground frozen too hard to dig proper graves, the bodies of those who died were often laid into the roadbed itself. The dead became part of the foundation. To this day, people say that beneath the surface of the Kolyma Highway lie the bones of the prisoners who built it. You are not just driving through Siberia, you are driving over them. Oymyakon and its neighbors sit in the shadow of that history. The same brutal cold that shapes daily life here was, for the prisoners, a weapon of the state, a natural executioner that needed no bullets. In Magadan, at the far end of the road, A towering monument called the Mask of Sorrow now stands, its stone face weeping, remembering the hundreds of thousands who vanished into this frozen land. The cold of Oymyakon is not only a wonder of nature. For a time, it was an instrument of one of the cruelest systems the world has ever built, and that shadow has never fully lifted. So what remains of Oymyakon now? Today, it is a village of around 500 people, holding on at the edge of the habitable world. The gulags are gone. What is left is the cold, the herds, the wooden houses, and a community that has become, almost by accident, famous. In recent years, the outside world has developed a fascination with this place. Adventurers and film crews make the long, frozen journey to stand at the pole of cold, to photograph their frozen eyelashes, to feel a temperature most people will never experience. They come to drink at the pole of cold, to photograph a thermometer showing numbers most people will never see in their lives, to taste stroganina and stand for a few brave minutes in air that could kill them. For a village that spent centuries in near total isolation, this trickle of extreme tourists is a strange new reality. The coldest place on Earth, slowly becoming a destination. But beneath the novelty, Oymyakon faces the same quiet threat as so many remote places. It is shrinking. Life here is punishingly hard, and the modern world offers warmth, comfort, and opportunity somewhere else. Young people leave for the cities, the old ways, the reindeer herding, the deep local knowledge grow harder to sustain with each passing year. And there is a new and unexpected danger. The planet is warming, and the far north is warming fastest of all. The permafrost that has held this land solid for millennia is beginning to thaw. As it does, the ground grows unstable, buildings crack and tilt, roads buckle, ancient carbon and even ancient diseases locked in the ice for tens of thousands of years risk being released. The very cold that defines Oymyakon, that killed so many and shaped everything, it is now slowly loosening its grip. There is a strange thought in that. Oymyakon has survived the worst that nature and human cruelty could throw at it. It endured a cold that kills and a regime that killed. And now its greatest uncertainty may come not from the deep freeze, but from the thaw. Which leaves one final question. What does it actually mean to make a home in a place like this? And why does it matter to the rest of us, sitting warm so far away? Stand in Oymyakon on a January morning, and you are standing at a boundary, not a border between countries, a border between what a human body can survive and what it cannot. On one side of that line is almost the entire story of our species. People spreading across deserts, forests, coasts, and plains, always drawn to warmth, to water, to ease. And on the other side, at the very frozen edge, are these 500 people who looked at the coldest inhabited spot on Earth and simply called it home. There is something in that which is hard to look away from. We tend to think of survival as a struggle against nature, something to be won and then left behind. But the people of Oymyakon did not conquer the cold. They made peace with it. They folded it into their lives, their food, their homes, their names. They did not defeat the impossible. They learned to live inside it. If you have made it this far with me, I want to invite you to subscribe and come explore the world with us every week. The places at the very edge of the map, and the people who somehow call them home. That is the whole reason this channel exists. Because the story of Oymyakon is not really about temperature, it is about the astonishing stubbornness of human beings. Our refusal to accept that anywhere is truly unlivable. Give us the harshest patch of ground on the planet, a valley that pools cold like poison, a place that has swallowed armies of the condemned, and still, someone will light a fire. raise a family, and stay. And that refusal to leave leads us to the last quiet truth of this frozen place. Return, one last time, to that cup of boiling water thrown into the winter air, the water that shatters into ice before it can fall. It is a small, almost playful image, but it holds the whole meaning of Oymyakon inside it. Here, the ordinary rules do not apply. Water does not fall. Cars do not sleep. The ground does not thaw. Children go to school in a cold that could kill them, and old men fish through ice on a river that has frozen every winter for longer than any of them can remember. Everything about this place says that no one should be here. The temperature says it. The isolation says it. Even the history says it. A land the powerful once used precisely because it was a place to make people disappear. And yet, the smoke still rises from the chimneys. The lights still glow in the long blue dark. 500 people still wake up each morning in the coldest inhabited place on the planet and go on living quietly at the outer limit of what our species can bear. We will never all live in Oymyakon. Most of us would not last a night, but there is something worth carrying away from a village at the bottom of a lake of cold, that the human capacity to endure, to adapt, to belong, reaches far further than we ever imagined from our warm and comfortable distance. That home is not the easiest place. It is the place you refuse to leave. The cold will keep coming. It always has. And every winter, against every reason, Oymyakon stays. If this stayed with you, do 3 things. Subscribe, so you do not miss where we go next. Share this with 5 people who complain about their winters. And tell me in the comments, could you last one single day in a place like this? Then tell me where we should go next. Somewhere remote. Somewhere extraordinary. Somewhere the map still goes quiet. We will be there. Until then, keep exploring.